Buying and selling a bike. Ignore those with a vested interest on YouTube, bike shops, MCN. They're giving you advice from their point of view. That's why they want the bike shiny and clean and spotless. Now, if you're going to be selling your bike, be honest. Unless you don't have a soul or a conscience or believe in karma or anything that sort of bollocks. Like the guy who sold a bike to Jason, who's looking to buy mine, possibly. He bought a 22-year-old bike, 50 quid less than what I'm asking for mine, and it's a death trap. Both sets of brakes, front and rear, are fucked. The wheel bearings are gone in the front wheel. I'm pretty sure they're gone in the front wheel. His electrics, well, when he turns the left indicator on, his dials start doing an epileptic seizure on a 90s fucking acid trip. And other little things. Right in the middle there, of the frame, is a hole big enough to satisfy a Jamaican bird. So, yeah, there's a good chance the frame could split and dump out the engine. At 110 miles an hour, pretty much kiss your ass goodbye. I had a quick go on his whilst he was trying mine out Friday. It's now Sunday. And he was like, why is yours so cheap? Well, that's the going rate. The guy he bought his from in Cardiff put an MOT on it, and the indicators were hanging off, his headlight was hanging off, what was hanging on by a piece of plastic. So if you're going to sell it, be honest. Also, get it on camera, so they can't turn around and say, well, you didn't tell us that you had a hole in this or a hole in that. It's like when I'm selling the bike, I told him, one advisory, leak on the exhaust, I patched it with a bandage. I told him the rear tyre's been plugged. I told him the rear pads have got about 1 or 2 mil left on the wear. So the pads got to be done in about 100 miles. Chain sprockets in about 300 or 400. Tyres, 300 or 400 miles. So I'm upfront, I'm honest about everything that needs doing to it. Same way I told him that I've got the old mirror that came off because it fell off. So be honest, because otherwise we can get sued. Also record it, so you've got something to fall back on that shows you and the person buying the bike, you're actually telling them exactly what the bike is like and what is wrong with it. Otherwise you could get sued. Worst case scenario, manslaughter. Now when you're buying a bike, it doesn't matter if it's a bike shop or private. Bike shops will also try to fuck you over. First things to look for on a bike is just put your hand on the bar ends here. If there is any roughness to it, then that means it's been dropped. If it's bent, it means it's been dropped heavy. Also, looking on the handlebars here, rub it with your finger. If it feels flush, there is a slight abrasion, so it's been bent a little bit at some point in the past 17 years, 15 years, whatever. Yeah, 17 years old, this one is now. If there's a severe bump, that means the handlebars have been bent and then straightened. That means the bike's been crashed at speed. It also means if it's been bent and straightened too much, it could snap. Check on the bar ends, check on the ends of your levers to see whether or not they've been scraped or scratched. That means it's come off. Same with the mirrors. Bar ends are a good excuse or a good reason to show that the bike has been crashed. Mine hasn't, because there's no damage to the rubbers here. Literally, I was going backwards at 2 miles an hour and I caught a piece of string. Make sure if you're going to buy a bike, you record the bike. Now the guy didn't want to do it because Jason was a little bit wary. You know, can I re-record it? I said, well, yeah, take your phone out, record everything, and that way you don't feel pressure when you go back to your wife and ask for permission. Ask her opinion. And so I told him, get your phone out, record it, zoom in, put the torch on, so you can actually get a good look. You can go home, look at it on the TV, and see if there is any pissing. I told him there's no pissing, there's no rust, there's nothing wrong mechanically with this bike. And the only liquid you can see is from chain lube, which is nice and gunky. Be wary of bikes that have no gunk on them, that are spotless. That is a real sign there's something wrong with the bike. If the bike is less than 3 years old, with only a couple of thousand miles on the clock, that's different. But if it's more than 5 years old, if it's got more than a few thousand miles, it's either going to have gunk on it somewhere. It should do. If for nothing else, from the chain lube. People who power hose the bike are covering something up. So take a look out for abrasion, any roughness, any marks, that means it's been hit or it's hit something. Keep an eye out to see whether or not the knickers match the socks, because if it's different, from a different bike, from a different era, then it's been crashed. The bike that Jason had, the tank didn't match the seat didn't match the headlights and the E-cup type dash that you had were from the same age, so they're obviously bought brand new and put onto a bike that had been crashed and probably written off. It's a very common thing. Another thing to look for when you're buying a bike, make sure it's got at least 2 keys. Older bikes will have 2 keys. Make sure all keys fit your ignition, your tank, and your seat release. If they don't, then that means somebody could have changed the barrel, or if the ignition is on your dash, they could have changed the clocks over. So I might have done 1,000,000 miles, but only said 1,000 because they changed the clocks and changed the ignition barrel. Big issue with this is that if you've got an immobilizer chip in the key, it will deactivate the immobilizer on the bike. I had this with Speed Thrills, I think they're called, down in Exeter. They got a lovely shiny 1250cc Bandit, 2 years old, but the headlight was different to what it should have had. Now, to my mind, first thing is that bike's been smashed head on and they've just done a cheap repair to get rid of it, or it's been stolen and written off. Oh no, it's the right one. You put the key in, turn the ignition, it lit up, but it wouldn't start, which proved my theory, and that the key was the wrong one, the barrel was the wrong one, the ignition was the wrong one for that bike. Because yeah, the key's turning the ignition on, but it's not deactivating the immobilizer. So make sure you've got these 2 keys for older bikes. Newer bikes, the ones that are all funky and digital, like your Zeds and your Ninjas, that sort of stuff. Most bikes made within the past, 5 years, they'll have 3 keys. Especially bikes that have a built-in immobilizer. You'll have your 2 standard keys. That was really pretty. You have your 2 standard keys, and then you'll have a red key. Now the red key is not used on the bike. It is used if you lose a key and you need to make a new one, because that red key contains digital information that can recode the key chip to deactivate your immobilizer. So if you're buying a bike and you've got a key missing, it means somebody's either lost it or they're keeping it to steal the bike back from you. So modern bikes, if you've got an immobilizer, it should have 3 keys.